property has been destroyed because of this earthquake. Now, how is it caused? It is caused because of the movement of the tectonic plates. When these tectonic plates move, the vibrations are transferred onto the land, onto the mountains, onto the plateaus where we stand. And therefore we feel the vibration. And when this vibration is felt, we term it as the earthquake. So suppose the movement takes place here. Suppose the force is pushed out from here. This place where the earthquakes first originated is called as the focus. This point is called the focus. The point of origin of the earthquake. The point of the origin of the movement that has caused the earthquake under the earth's surface is called as the focus. Now, exactly above the focus, if you go and where the vibrations felt, this part, exactly above the focus, this is the focus. Exactly above the focus, on the land where we stand, exactly above the focus on the land where the vibrations first felt, that is the epicenter. That means the epicenter is the place where we feel the movement first on the land where we stand. But actually, the movement was generated inside the earth's surface. Where the point where it was generated is the focus. The place exactly above the focus on the earth's surface is called the epicenter, where we say the point of origin of the earthquake on the land. That's why whenever we say, where was the epicenter of the earthquake, we say, where did it first occur? That is called as the epicenter. So earthquake is also one of the factors which causes a lot of loss of lives and even property. See, the instrument that we measure earthquake, can see here, is the seismograph. The seismograph is the instrument. Seismograph also you can say. It's the instrument which measures the earthquake. The base is still. So what happens? When the base moves, the mass on top, when the base is fixed. So when the earth vibrates, the base is fixed, but on top the mass moves, whereby it, recalls the movement of the earthquake. And that is how we come to know the intensity of the earthquake. How strong it was. How strong the earthquake was, we measure that on the seismograph. So now let's see, what could be the precautions that we could take to reduce, to minimize the damage from the earthquake? What precautions? The first thing is that we could build houses which are earthquake resistant. We could build houses which are not very tall. We shouldn't build very tall houses. We should build houses which are earthquake friendly. And if by chance the earthquake does take place, and if you are inside the home, always take cover under the tables or under a place where you don't get hurt by the falling objects because of the vibration that is caused by the earthquakes. If you're on the field, if you're on the road, you have to make sure that you always stay in a place where there's no buildings or there's no dangers of any objects falling onto you. So these are the few ways in which we can take precautions when the earthquake takes place. Now let's move down and see the next one. The next point. Point number 2, that is the floods. See, floods is also another way in which disaster is created. Now floods could be caused naturally, and it also could be caused by man. So flood is both a natural disaster as well as a man-made disaster. See, when the water flows, I told you in the plains, because of the excessive rainfall and the river flowing with plenty of water, when that excess of water starts to spill out into the banks of the river onto the lands, it results in the creation of floods. Floods are also caused by man. See, for instance, the global warming that takes place. The global warming that takes place constantly, the temperature of the earth is slowly but surely increasing. And this is another major challenge for the human beings. The global warming, the temperature of the earth constantly increasing. And because of the global warming, which is because of men, the temperature of the earth is increasing. And when the temperature increases, the ice, the glaciers starts to melt. And when the glaciers melt, the excess of water is all taken down to the plains, whereby floods are created, because of which disaster takes place. Now, it is also caused by human beings, like another way, the second way, is also caused by human beings. I told you global warming is also one of the causes by human beings. It is because of us that floods are caused. The second one is also when we release the water from the dams. When the excess of water is released from the dams, we have to be very careful in how the water is released. Otherwise, the excess of water could go down to the plains and again cause floods. Flooding of the area will take place, whereby creating again disaster. So, the second way we discuss now is floods. Flood also cause disaster. So, what are the ways, what are the precautions we can take during floods? What are the precautions we can take during floods? When floods take place, firstly, when the flood is about to take place, the government should make sure that the people are made aware of the calamity that's coming up, so that the people who are there in the lower areas could take shelter in the safer places. So there should be a warning. A message should be sent to all the people before it hits their villages, so that minimum casualties take place. See? Warnings. We also can control floods by repairing the riverbanks, maintaining the riverbanks properly, so that the rivers don't spill out onto the lands. See? Maintaining the riverbanks by building walls, protected walls, so that the damage can be minimized. Avoid using electrical appliances during floodings. See? Making sure that the gases are switched off, electricity is not used. See? These are the ways in which we can take some precautions during a flood. Now let's see the next one, that is fire. Point number 3 is fire. Fire is also another cause for disaster. Because of fire also, a lot of people lose their lives. A lot of property is destroyed. Now this also could be naturally or man-made. See? Naturally or man-made. Sometimes when the earthquakes take place, fires could spread. Sometimes because of lightning, fires could spread. The forest fires that we hear, destroying a lot of vegetation, which happened a few months ago in Australia. We don't know whether it was started by the lightning, or most probably could be a man-made cause. See, where a lot of property, lives were lost. See? Some people lost their lives. Animals were, all killed, destroyed. Forest vegetation cover, all that was destroyed. Property, houses were burnt. That's what happened in Australia. With great difficulty, they could control that. So, fire is also one of the causes which results to the destruction of property and the loss of lives. For fire, I told you, could be both natural as well as man-made. That means, for instance, if you see, I told you the natural ways, earthquakes, lightnings, they cause fire. Man-made cause also. See, the fire that starts in the industry, in the factory, in the domestic place, because of the negligence of some people, fire spreads. Whereby what happens? Disaster is created. People lose their lives. Property is destroyed, especially in the very crowded places. It's very dangerous in the crowded places. That is why whenever you use your home appliances, like when you use the electrical appliance at home, you should always wash your hands and make sure that your hands are dry. When you switch on the gas, don't forget to switch it off. Don't keep a container of whatever you're making, a dish of whatever you're making on the gas stove, and then leave it. And then get yourself occupied with something else. Not coming back to switch it off. These things are very, very dangerous. So you should avoid these negligence at home. See, you're staying at home, you should also help your parents as well. Besides the little bit of studies that you're doing every day, you have to have a routine life. Get up in the morning in time, sit for studies in the morning in time, 1 hour in the morning, or 1.5 hours in the morning. Daytime, help your parents at home. Let them also get some help from you during your stay with your parents at home. Evening again, studying for 1.5 hours or so. And make sure you read a good book as well in the meantime. Pick up a good book and start reading. That's very, very important. So, fire also is another way in which disaster is created. I told you it's man-made as well as natural. Now, what are the precautions we can take? What are the precautions that we can take to avoid disaster created by fire? What would be the precautions? Yes? What could be the precautions that we could take? We should make sure that whenever we use any appliances like the gas at home, gas stoves at home, or any appliances, we have to be very careful to switch it off. So we were doing this, the third one, that is fire. So we just saw how fire also causes disaster. Whether it's in the industries, or whether it's in the factories, or whether it's at your homes, it does lead to disaster. So we need to take precautions. Be very careful in how we handle the gas at home, how we handle fire at home. Whenever we have fire, like I told you, if we make fire anywhere, make sure that we put out the fire properly. See? It's very important. Because fire also can cause a loss of life and property. It also causes disaster. See? Fire. See? Then what are the precautions we could take? What are the precautions that we could take? See? By chance if the fire occurs in a particular place, if you're in a closed room, make sure you cover your nose with a cloth so that you don't inhale the smoke. We should not panic when there's a fire. We should make sure we put it off properly. Depending on what we throw, what we put. See, there's a way in which we put off the fire. That's why it's very important to, make a group of yourselves, sometimes do some research work in how we can prevent fire and so on. See? Do some research work when you're staying at home. Train yourself with these things. How do we put out the fire? Make sure we don't use electrical appliances during those times. It's very, very important. See? And then we need to inform the authorities, the department, persons, the fire department when these things happen. It's very important. So the precautions. Now, then let's go to the next part, that is the importance of disaster management. Importance of disaster management. Why is disaster management very important? Now, disaster management is very important because we can minimize the amount of disaster that takes place, or we can also prevent a disaster from taking place. That is why we have a disaster management department in our country as well. So disaster management is very important because it can minimize the damage when a disaster takes place, or also it can prevent a disaster from taking place. That is why disaster management is so very important. We have a disaster management department in our country as well. All the countries around the world have their own disaster management team. See? Okay, before we go to the last part, let's see the phases of disaster management. Phases of disaster management. Phases of disaster management. There are 4 phases of disaster management. The first one is mitigation. Mitigation. What is mitigation? It is the action of reducing the seriousness of the disaster. Action of reducing the seriousness of the disaster. So that if by chance the disaster takes place, then what happens? The damage can be minimized. Action of reducing the seriousness of the disaster. Point number 2, we have is preparedness. 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 How much are you prepared to handle the disaster? That's point number 2. You have to be prepared. If you are not prepared to handle the disaster, then it's going to be very, very disastrous. It's going to be very, very bad. So therefore, a country, the people in the country should be prepared to overcome the disaster. Preparedness, point number 2. Number 3, response. How do we respond when a disaster takes place? How do we respond? That's also very, very important. How do we respond when a disaster takes place? It's very, very important. Response. And then we have point number 4, that is recovery. Point number 4, recovery. See? How do we recover ourselves after a disaster has taken place? See? How do we recover ourselves after a disaster has taken place? See? Damage assessment, you can see in the book there. How do we clean up the mess? Restoration, rehabilitation, resource distribution. See, how do we recover after the disaster has taken place? These are the 4 ways or the 4 phases of disaster management. Mitigation, to reduce the seriousness of the disaster. Preparedness, how much are you prepared to face the disaster? If a disaster takes place, how much are you prepared? Response, how do we respond to it when a disaster takes place? And recovery, after the disaster has taken place, how do we recover ourselves? What are the ways in which we recover ourselves? How should we recover ourselves? What should we do to recover ourselves? These are the phases of disaster management. Then we go to the last part, that is the role of the government in disaster management. The role of the government in disaster management. Now in our country also we have the disaster management department, and this is looked over by the Ministry of Home Affairs. In our country, the disaster management is looked by the Ministry of the Home Affairs. They are in charge, the overall in charge to look after the disaster that has taken place in the country. It's headed by the Prime Minister. And then in the state, if you see, state level, we also have a disaster management team or department in the state level. And this disaster management in the state is supervised, is looked by the Chief Minister of the state. If you see in Sikkim, the disaster management department of the team, the people who are there in the disaster management team, all of them are under the Chief Minister of our state. See? So right now, we are having this lockdown, and till now, we are very fortunate. Not a single case of this COVID-19 is found in our state. And who's managing all these aspects? Who's overlooking all these things? Our Chief Minister of our state, Honorable Chief Minister, Sri Prem Singh Tham. He is overlooking these aspects to make sure that the disaster does not take place in a state. So, in the state level, the disaster management is is under in charge of the Chief Minister of the state. And then if you go to the state level, district level, if you go to the district level, in the district level, the disaster management is looked by or monitored or supervised by the sub-divisional magistrate. Sub-divisional magistrate or district magistrate, SDM, district magistrate, or also we have the head of the Gram Panchayats. They look after the disaster in a particular region, small region. If it's a district, it's the divisional magistrate. So, dear students, these are the lessons that we have done through this class today, and please make sure you go through this video a couple of times so that you understand whatever I have taught in this class, and so that as you answer the questions at the back, you don't have much difficulties. But it's very important that you read the book as well once. If you don't understand, read it twice. And after you have read it, please make sure that you do the home assignments at the back. Exercises A, B, C, then D and E. A, B, C, D and E. These are your home assignments. Please do it and make sure you keep it up to date so that when you come back to school, I can just have a look and see whether you have done it correctly or there needs to be some corrections. So please do that. Study well, stay safe and enjoy yourself at home. Thank you so much.